Discord says it's cracking down on abuse. Starting next month, the messaging app will require users to prove their age or be shut out from access to adult servers.
Earlier this year, Discord announced that it would start analyzing everyone's account data to figure out how old its users are.
This goes out to all my gamers out there. What the hell are we using now? The Discord is definitely not on our list of things to use.
So if you use Discord, you need to uninstall that shit right now because they're about to start spying on every message you send.
If the platform thought you were underage, it would ask for ID, and if you didn't give it, it would kick you off the platform. Welcome to the fight over age verification.
I think in practice, Discord and a lot of these online platforms are seeing age verification as a silver bullet answer to this problem of young people's safety online. And the technology is not reliable. It is not accessible or fully privacy protective at the moment or accurate to be used at such a large scale.
Rin Alijaji is the Associate Director of State Affairs at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. She says that even though age verification rules are put in place to keep children safe online, the reality of what these rules actually do is a lot more complicated.
I don't disagree with the issue of young people needing privacy and safety online, but I find it ironic that now these services are asking you to submit these deeply personal pieces of information like your ID or your face or your credit card information or sometimes your mortgage application to prove your age.
In response to legislation, some apps have had versions of age verification for a while now, but when Discord tried it, people got really mad. And at first, this might not make a whole lot of sense because from the outside, it looks like a bunch of gamer nerds are threatening to boycott a messaging platform that they've used for over a decade in some cases, over just an ID check. I mean, what gives, right? And you might be thinking, but Dexter, I'm not a gamer, I'm not a nerd, I don't use Discord. Well, here's the thing. If you want to buy a computer or a phone or literally almost anything that has a screen on it, there's a new law that's about to bring this to you. So today we'll talk about how a bunch of gamers suddenly found their way into politics, why age verification might actually harm kids, and how pretty soon you're gonna get dragged into this fight whether you wanna be or not. This is Kill Switch. I'm Dexter Thomas. Let's get into it. Discord as a platform wasn't specifically built for kids. It actually requires users to be at least 13 years old to sign up. Gamers definitely use it a lot, but if you can think of almost any hobby, there's probably a community dedicated to that topic on Discord. So I feel like most people watching or listening to this know what Discord is, but just in case, broad strokes here, right? It's a chat app. Roughly 100 million people use it daily. They can do text chat, group messages, you can do voice chat, you can do video, you can share your screen. And I think most people know it as, oh, this is what gamers use. I know that's not quite it, but what other uses would you say people use Discord for?
Yeah, it definitely started in the gaming community and is still to this day very big for gamers, which the video game industry is huge. There's millions of people that game every day. But Discord has then since moved to things like fandoms, to political discussions. I have friends whose, soccer teams are on Discord. They just, talk to their friends on there.
I know people who their knitting club is entirely on Discord. I've taught college classes and the stuff that the college uses sucks. And so we've used Discord. So I've been pretty bought into Discord, honestly. So even though Discord is used by a bunch of pretty diverse communities, a lot of people weren't all that familiar with it. Actually, some people's first impression about Discord is what they got when the lawsuits started happening.
A family in Camden County is suing the makers of the gaming app Roblox as well as the community app Discord, saying neither do enough to protect children from sexual predators.
So in early February, Discord announced that they will be rolling out mandatory age verification around the world with full implementation in early March. And what that means is that if Discord had either estimated you to be under 18, or if it doesn't have enough information about you or your account, you would be automatically put into a teen appropriate experience is what they were calling it, which means basically any content filters or there would be restrictions on who can contact you via direct messages or who can add you as a friend, if you can or can't speak on things like stage channels, which are the spaces where a lot of community events happen on Discord.
Discord's saying that they want to be able to verify how old you are as a user. Mm-hmm. How does this work?
So what Discord has said is that initially they would get information about you based on how you interact on that platform. If you've been a Discord user for years, they've, garnered all of this data about what information you interact with, who you've talked to, and has estimated sort of where you may be. Services like YouTube actually rolled similar ways of age estimation previously, and there were stories all over the internet of people being, put into brackets where they weren't, but just because, for example, they enjoy cartoons. So now YouTube has decided they're 12 instead of actually a 50-year-old.
Right. You're trying to watch some old school Tom and Jerry or whatever, and it thinks you're 12. Yeah.
Exactly. So they're relying on the information that they're given from your interactions on that service. And what Discord said is that most adults would be sorted through this system to be an adult because of the data that they already have about you. But if you weren't estimated to be an adult and were locked into this teen appropriate experience, then you would have to go through a third-party vendor and provide either your government issued ID or go through a face scan that would then estimate how old you are, which both have their own sets of problems and have been notoriously reported to be very unreliable, especially for people of color, for trans people, for people with disabilities. A lot of these facial estimation services also require things like a liveness check, where they ask you to move your head or open your mouth. And those, again, look a lot different for people with disabilities or people who may not be able to do those things.
So in February, when they announced that they were rolling out mandatory age verification for users worldwide, the reaction was pretty immediate.
What? This is insanity! So in order to verify that I'm over the age of 13, I have to upload my driver's license or a scan of my face to Discord?
While I would love to trust Discord with that information, I just also think it's kind of a dangerous precedent, no?
If it sounds like people are all of a sudden getting mad out of nowhere, there's some more context to this. Just a few months before the age verification announcement, Discord was in the headlines for a very different reason.
Well, this one's exciting. Discord says that 70,000 users may have had their government-issued IDs compromised. The recent attack exposed them, and the hackers, well, they claim they've got nearly 2.2 million, quite a bit more than what Discord claims.
In 2025, Discord had a major data breach through a third-party customer support system called Zendesk. This is the vendor that they were using for age verification in the UK. This breach exposed users' phone numbers, IP addresses, physical addresses, and in some cases, billing information. So Discord coming back just a few months after that hack was announced and saying, yeah, we're gonna need your government ID now and maybe even a scan of your face. A lot of people saw that and said, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
They really had a breach 2 months ago, and now they're like, hey, Mr. Government ID. Yeah, no, not doing it.
And that's aside from the fact that these tools just don't really work. When Discord tested an age verification system in the UK last summer, kids figured out how to get around it almost immediately. One popular method was taking a screenshot from a video game character, submitting that as your face, and boom, age verification passed.
There's stories all over the internet of different ways to bypass these services or these age verification mandates. And 404 Media actually just put out a article about this YouTube video from I think 2018 of a woman moving her head slowly, and it was used I think for some sort of training purposes, but people are now using it as a way to bypass these age verification.
Gosh. The outrage online was so massive that within just a few weeks, Discord announced that they were pausing the rollout of the age verification process. But this brings us back to the question of why Discord would force users all over the world to submit their identity. Was it just them trying to cover their back so they don't get hit with another child safety lawsuit? Well, in some case, Discord actually had to do this.
The United Kingdom has begun enforcing an age verification aspect of its 2023 Online Safety Act, requiring platforms to ensure that young users do not have access to harmful content online.
The first of its kind Online Safety Act in the UK now requires apps like Discord to force British users to submit age verification. So Discord was already doing this in the UK, as well as in Australia, which now has a new social media ban.
The world's first nationwide social media ban for children has been in effect for a few days now in Australia. The country's new law bans kids under 16 from more than 10 platforms, including TikTok and Instagram.
So one important detail here though, Australia's social media ban does not cover Discord, but Discord said that they included Australian users anyway to go above and beyond in demonstrating its, quote, ongoing commitment to teen safety. The fact that Discord was doing more than it really needed to, not just complying with the UK law, but complying in advance for countries like Australia, made a lot of people angry.
Gamers probably wanted to see Discord fight back. They wanted to see Discord not just fold and decide to comply there and fight for their users. I think in late stage capitalism, you can't really expect a platform to care about their users more than they care about their bottom line dollar. But that is the sense I think I get from the Discord community and how they perceive the platform and services values to be.
After all that backlash, Discord has said that they're moving the rollout of the age verification process to later this year. But that initial outrage does seem to have had an effect on how Discord is going about all of this.
Another thing that they announced also that they are going to have stricter requirements for partners that offer things like facial estimation, including that that process needs to happen on device and doesn't go like to the third party, which is a high bar. And the companies that they were initially going with, Persona and KID, did not meet that bar.
So that's interesting already. The people that they were comfortable going with had nobody push back. They have now decided actually these people weren't good enough. So gamers have won a battle. It's probably too soon though to say that they won the war. But then again, maybe Discord is just an easy target here. Maybe complying in advance is inevitable. Because even if you're not in the UK or Australia, and even if you're not a Discord user, there's another law that's about to change what happens when you first boot up almost any new computer or any new phone. There's a law that just passed called the Digital Age Assurance Act. This is in California. Can you talk to me about that? Because now we're broadening the scope here.
AB 1043 did pass last year. It goes into effect in 2027. Requires all operating systems and app stores to create age brackets that segment their users based on their ages. So those brackets are between I think it's like 13 and 16, 16 and 18, and then 18 and older. And once you've opened your new laptop or your phone, you're then asked to, say what your birth date is or your age, and then they place you in that bracket. And then it requires that operating system, so your phone, your laptop, to collect this information and send that to every application that asks for your age. And it requires applications to ask if they are deemed not to be used by minors. A lot of people have been really worrying about what it means for every device that people use. Your watch, your digital scale, you'll have to tell them how old you are.
So California's Digital Age Assurance Act requires any operating system. This means Windows, this means Mac OS, but even phone operating systems like iOS and Android. They have to collect your age when you set up a device and share that information with apps on request, so developers know whether they're dealing with a child, a teenager, or an adult.
A big problem that we see there is, what about families that use one device? What happens there if multiple people share a device, or low-income households often don't have multiple devices for people to use? And what age would you then tell the operating system you were?
Another big issue with this law is that it relies on self-reporting. A kid could type in any birthday that they want and say that they're over 18. But now with this law, operating systems are required to ask anyway. If they don't ask, there's consequences. You can be fined per infraction.
Right, up to $2,500 per affected child, or $7,500 for intentional violations.
Which is kind of nuts. If there's a family with 2 kids and both of them get on the computer and you did not properly get their age, $5,000. 2 kids.
Yeah, and there are other concerns about open source and who is a operating system here also.
Mm-hmm.
They define it to include things like mobile devices and computers very broadly, and virtually any digital device that runs a software that has built in the last 3 decades would fall into that category.
So just to clarify here, if someone lies about their age during the age verification process and the software doesn't catch that they're lying, that's not covered in the law. You only get in trouble if your software doesn't ask. So if this law is just mandating you to ask how old someone is and not actually do anything with it, okay, well, it's ineffective, but what's the actual problem here? Well, a lot of people see this as a foot in the door for something more nefarious. Once the government has a law demanding that Apple or Microsoft collect information on you just in order to turn on your computer or your phone, the concern is that next they can start stacking other laws on top of that really start monitoring you, making you afraid to speak your mind online or even afraid to speak your mind into your own notes app. And let's just be clear here, most people aren't even aware of this argument. Most people aren't aware of these laws. And those of us who are again, kind of nerds. And a lot of these nerds are putting pressure on the people who make the software to fight back. So is anyone doing anything about this? Well, yeah. One operating system called Midnight BSD has included in their terms and conditions that you're just straight up not allowed to use their software in California, and they explicitly state that this rule is a protest against that California law. Say whatever you want, but you can't say that's not a principled stand. But Midnight BSD is a really niche project, and it's basically run by one lead developer, and he can pretty easily make those personal decisions if he wants to. But what some people are hoping for is someone with more sway to actually fight the laws themselves. And that has happened. The CEO of a company that makes an operating system called Pop OS, you can think of it as a very user-friendly version of Linux. It's actually the one that I use. He's been pushing really hard against age verification laws, and there was a kind of copycat version of this age verification as a bill in Colorado, and he and other advocates managed to get the bill amended to exclude open source software like Linux. So if this holds, in Colorado, you won't have that invasive questioning when you turn on your Linux computer. But most people do not use a Linux computer, and this change doesn't apply in California, which, no offense to Colorado, is a much bigger player in the tech industry.
That liability part is really why people have been raising the alarm about this bill, because it ends up putting it in the developers or the software, that the folks that are building the software's court to decide what to do in that instance. And imagine you're a software developer, small shop of 4 people who started a open source project, and now you're hit with this huge fine for a small startup. That's a recipe for over censorship and a chilling effect of people not wanting to, get hit with another fine. And I think for a lot of Linux users, they see Linux mission as something to promote privacy, to not advance censorship. But at the end of the day, I think there is a bottom line of being California is a huge state.
Also, we're talking about technology, and Silicon Valley is here.
Right.
Like banning California from using your software, especially when your software is the thing that makes your computer run, is kind of nuts.
Yeah, and I think California will have to contend with that fact that these laws will end up pushing certain companies and certain services out of the state because they just can't comply with them.
Also, speaking of laws, let's talk about lawsuits. More specifically, a lawsuit that almost everyone's heard of by now. The big case against Meta and YouTube.
In California, a jury found YouTube and Meta, the parent company of Instagram and Facebook, liable for designing their platforms to be addictive for children and teens, despite knowing it could harm their mental health. All told, the companies would pay $6 million in damages.
So that lawsuit wasn't about age verification. And to be honest, getting into what it actually was about is probably an entirely different episode. But I'll just point this out. When it comes to asking, okay, what do we do about social media platforms other than just hitting the companies with a fine that's basically lunch money for them, the conversation keeps coming back to this age verification thing. The day before that verdict in California, Meta was ordered by a New Mexico court to pay $375 million for child safety violations, and the Attorney General, again, brought up age verification as a solution.
But more importantly, we're going to be asking for changes to the design features of the platform itself, real age verification, changes to the algorithm, an independent monitor to oversee those changes, and fundamentally a demand that they do business differently in New Mexico.
This line of thinking might be what's motivating Discord to comply in advance, especially as a response to the lawsuits that they've already had to face.
It's a fear of liability. There must be a big, conference room somewhere where all of the legal advisors came together and said, the only way to make all these lawsuits go away is to figure out a way to make sure that there are certain restrictions for people under 18. And I think as it's been rolling out in practice, they've realized that the answer isn't as easy, and that just because you don't want to, face this huge fine or liability doesn't mean that the answer is as easy as just require age verification.
And yet, age verification is only becoming more prevalent. Just back in March, Apple rolled out device-level age verification in the UK. Users who don't confirm that they're 18 or older don't just lose access to certain apps or websites, but Apple will turn on monitoring of their messages, of their shared photo albums, their AirDrop and FaceTime calls. And similar things are coming to the US. Starting this summer, new users in Utah and Louisiana will have their age information shared with the App Store to comply with new age restriction laws in those states. Again, there's nothing wrong with letting companies have access to all your data if that's what you want. What's slowly being lost here is one of the things that makes the internet what it is: the right to decide how much information you want to share, whether that's nothing, everything, or somewhere in between.
And I think one cornerstone of what the internet has stood for, and one piece that EFF has fought for and continues to fight for, is the right to anonymity, and how the right to anonymity allows you to speak freely online. That is a nonpartisan issue. That is not something that's politically affiliated. People of all walks of lives have turned to the internet to share their stories and to make community, and to be someone that they might not feel comfortable being in the analog world, so to speak. You see people having very open and frank conversations online, and that is precisely because these conversations are not linked to your government issued ID. It's precisely because you're not worried that, someone's going to know who you are or where you live, and they're going to come and, track you down. And we all also benefit from the information that anonymity has granted us. Talk about whistleblowers or advocates in governments where, they're not allowed to speak. If their government issued ID was associated with their Discord account or their Twitter account, they're way less likely to share what they would share. There is a sense of lack of control and privacy when you have, everything that you put out on the internet associated with your government issued ID, especially in today's day and age where, speech and political speech is targeted. I think there's more fear there as well.
All right, so we've heard a lot about the problems with age verification laws, but at the end of the day, do they actually help kids even a little bit? Just kind of devil's advocate here. If Discord is asking me my age, they've got a feature which is going to guess that how old I am. And so it might never actually ask me for my ID. It might be able to figure it out based on how old my account is or the kinds of messages that I send. I'm talking about taxes with my friends. Not a lot of kids talk about taxes in the stock market or whatever. You're probably okay, right? So if age verification is, even if it's a bit annoying, who can argue against protecting kids? And also anonymity. I'm not afraid of if people know what I think. I say everything with my chest. What's the big deal here? And I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not doing anything subversive. What's the big deal with something that will put a little friction in front of trolls, scammers, thieves, bad people getting to either me or kids. What's wrong with that?
I think if we had proof that age verification actually did that, I may, say, you know what, you have a point. But we don't have proof that age verification can actually protect children. And we see that the constant collection and storing of your information exposes us to massive harms, both online and offline. And even when you were talking about the fact that, like, oh, I send messages to my friend about taxes, how creepy is it that we have come to a point where we have just felt like it's normal that Discord is reading our messages and knows what we're talking about? Because that's pretty crazy to me.
It comes down to a question that nobody's really solved yet. Who is actually responsible for protecting kids online?
We've heard stories from Australia of parents themselves using their own faces to bypass these gates for their children to be able to use social media. And I think that brings in this big question of where the government sits in parenting and the ability for parents to choose what is and is not appropriate for their children. And this is putting the government squarely in the middle of that relationship between a parent and their young person, their child.
You could say that the internet is a terrible place for kids right now, and you'd be partially right. There's a study out there that reports that nearly half of teenagers surveyed say that social media has negative effects on people their age. That's pretty serious. But social media can also be a positive force. I mean, right now there are kids learning history, learning languages, learning new art forms, or finding communities of other kids just like them around the world. This is stuff that is not going to happen on encyclopedia.com. It happens on social media. Those kids deserve a safe way to interact with the world, and this can be done. But the key to that might not be what we're doing right now, making laws that give companies even more information about ourselves, like giving them our ID or maybe even our face, when they already have a bunch of information about us. Actually, Rin says that part of the way forward might actually be reducing the information these companies have about us and about kids.
I'd say it's two-pronged really here. First one is if legislators really wanted to protect people online, young people, adults, they really need to pass a strong, comprehensive privacy law, which means that instead of, building more surveillance and censorship, we are targeting and addressing the massive collection and processing of our personal data, which is the root cause of all of these problems online. The reason why young people are fed ads about harmful things, or if a young person looks at one topic, then they're now being fed constantly with this information. A comprehensive federal privacy law would target that, and that's where we see lawmakers' energy and focus would be most helpful and would have a lasting impact, not just for young people but adults too, because we all are being used as data points and ways to make money off of our information for these companies. And then the second aspect, I think, is education. We have to approach that issue from a more holistic perspective, where we talk about education, where we talk about parents' role in protecting their children when they're using internet. We really need to invest into a more robust parental control system for these platforms and for operating systems as well, and education for how to use them for parents. A lot of them already exists. We have a lot of colleagues at EFF who are parents themselves who use those parental controls, and I think people really need to invest in learning how those work. And also, digital literacy in schools is way behind. We haven't taught young people about social media, how the things that people are pointing out as the issue behind Discord or behind Roblox being predators online. Taking that age-old advice of don't talk to strangers and don't share information about yourself, and modernizing the advice that young people are getting about how to engage in the digital world or on the internet is also key for us.
We're also in a stage right now where there's books being strongly discouraged or pulled out of libraries, which are just about history. This is what happened during slavery. This is what happened after slavery. This is
Right.
what was happening in such and such country in such and such year. Like, those things are being pulled from curriculum. And if the bar is not appropriate for minors, okay, porn is not appropriate for minors. Most people aren't going to fight with you on that. But if the bar is just not appropriate for minors, and you decide that learning about a period of history is not appropriate for school at all, and thus children, then yeah, you can start blocking whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I love that you made that connection immediately, because they do use the exact same language that they use in book bans to implement these age verification mandates for banning harmful minor materials. I'll also mention that people will likely see in different states these bills come into effect in the coming years, where things like Twitter, or now X, Facebook, Instagram all start implementing age gates as well, because that's what these bills require. Another thing that we also try to warn against is how these bills define harmful to minors. They define the concept of harmful to minors to be so broad that any attorney
Right.
general can decide, I don't want anyone under 18 to read anything about reproductive rights or, access to abortion care. I think that's harmful to minors. So next thing you know, Planned Parenthood's website needs to be under an age gate, or sexual health education is under an age gate. And we are at this point, it is coming to people. It will be everyone's problem in due time. So I definitely recommend for people who may not be nerds to join the conversation, because it does impact more than just, the people that care about the internet. And it's a civil rights issue. It's a free speech issue. It is an access to information issue. And we always welcome people to the fight.
Welcoming people to the fight is a really interesting way to put it, because in this episode, yes, we've called it a fight. But for a lot of people, I'm not sure the age verification has ever felt like a proper fight. So until very recently, and I'm speaking stereotypically, broad brush here, on one side you had a bunch of nerds who were talking about civil liberties and computer code, and on the other side there's a bunch of politicians who don't even know how to turn on a computer, and they're just being fooled by big tech companies who don't really care what happens. They're just making money off of all of us. That's not a fight. At least it's not a fair fight. It's a bunch of policymakers making decisions that affect people who don't even really know what's happening. But now, more of us know that this fight is happening, partially because some gamers got big mad about their little Discord chat rooms. This is a good thing. And after listening to this, maybe you have some opinions about age verification, and that's also a really good thing. If you want to know more, we got some links in the show notes to everything we referenced. But whatever your stance is on all this right now, please do not leave this fight to the handful of nerds and the politicians, because we cannot figure all this out without hearing from everyone. Thank you to Ren for coming on the show and breaking all this down for us. And also thank you for checking out another episode of the video version of the Kill Switch podcast. We do this every week, so if you want to catch the next interview, make sure you're subscribed. And, if there's anything you're curious about, drop a comment and we might even be able to make a show out of it. But all that said, catch you on the next week.